Hello, it looks like we are live, so we're just going to wait a few more minutes for a few more people to join, and then we'll get going on the webinar. So again, this is Jenny Hill with Taiga, and we're going to talk to Mach 1 here in a few minutes. Hi, everyone. We're going to wait about 1 more minute. We've got people joining here quickly, and then we'll get going on the webinar. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome, everyone. I am Jenny Hill. I am the customer success lead here at Taiga. And today we're going to be talking about how you can take raw data and make it or turn it into real decisions with AI. We have a guest speaker who's one of our clients, and as well as another member of the team that I will go through and introduce, and then we'll get right into the meat of the presentation. So while we're speaking, there is a chat. So if you have any questions that come up along the way, you are welcome to throw those in the chat, and we'll try to get those answered at the end. And for anything that is not answered, we will follow up with you after the call. So, and it looks like John just posted, he's going to be helping to monitor that as well. All right, so here we go. Let's talk a little bit about AI, which I know has been the hot topic in almost every conference and presentation you probably have been involved in the last, at least for sure, the last month or so. The speakers today are myself, Jenny. I'm going to be monitoring or moderating, I should say, and trying to keep Alan and John on track here with the presentation.
Yeah, you're going to be monitoring us too.
Yeah, we're going to be monitoring also.
Yeah, good luck with that, Jenny.
Yes, yeah. So if I cut you guys off, don't take offense. First of all, we have John Oakley, who is the CIO and one of the co-founders of Taiga. He's going to be engaging this conversation with Alan Meyer, who is the CEO of Meyer Oil, which does business as Mach 1 stores in the Midwest. So welcome, gentlemen, and we're looking forward to getting going and hearing what you guys have to share. What we're going to cover today is we're going to talk a little bit about, and Alan's going to give his perspective on what life before Taiga was like. So Alan is one of our very first clients, and so he's going to talk about how things were before Taiga and then what he's doing now. He's going to talk about how he chose us and how he has evolved Taiga into an AI-powered workflow. So Then we're going to get into what's next, and we actually have we're teeing up a webinar part 2 with Mach 1, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we have a QA. So get those questions in. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Alan. Why don't you give us a little bit of background about your stores?
Yeah, thanks, Jenny. So 25 stores you see there. We've got 18 gas stations, 7 truck stops. Built our last one last November. The branded Phillips 66 and Marathon. So, and continuing to grow. So do you want me to get into kind of how I met you guys and all that now, or?
Sure, go for it. You can, yeah, go for it.
So as she had on that last slide, 2021, I got a cold email from Bill Ivers at Taiga. Never met him or didn't know anything about him, and basically said, we'll take your data and put it on a website for you. And we had tried that with a couple other companies and never even got to where we could see our data. So replied to the email, said, yeah, I'd definitely do a webinar. And long story short, Bill said, give me a chance and I'll have your data on our portal and by the end of the week. And mainly just because I didn't believe him, I said, let's try it. And 48 hours later, we were looking at our transaction level data through your portal. And I mean, it was taking weeks or months with other companies and it never worked. So became a pretty big believer pretty quick there. And over, one of the biggest things is, you guys are a relatively small software company at the start and kind of watched and assisted with seeing this thing grow, which is kind of how I'm a bigger fan of it than working with large companies that aren't very flexible or agile. So you guys kind of fit the culture and the profile I was looking for too. So, and over the years, I'd always go from being frustrated because I couldn't get access to my data. And over the last couple of years, basically saying, now I've got so much data, I don't even know what to do with it. And I think AI is a long way towards fixing that problem.
Awesome. And we'll get into exactly what you're doing here in a minute. So thank you, Alan, for that. So let me go to the next slide. So for those of you who are not familiar with Taiga, John's going to talk a little bit about how it works. And then, how do you get this how do you get this raw data and put it into actionable insights? So John, would you mind going through a little bit about how Taiga is set up for those who
Yeah, sure. So Taiga platform, we're a data platform first. You can think of us as, think of like an iceberg. You've got, the big part of the iceberg that's underwater. That's our data platform. And then on top, we have our mobile-friendly display layer, everything from executive dashboards, things focused for category managers, workforce optimization, all sorts of different tools for running convenience retail. And then getting great answers for anybody in your team. Beneath the water, we have all of those integrations to pretty much every system you already work with. And all that comes into one consolidated model within Taiga and gives you nice, clean apples to apples answers across all your stores. And so that's kind of, the short and sweet answer about how you can understand Taiga. We're a data platform first. We want to make it so that any answer you want to answer about your business, you've got the data to back that up at the time you need it, where it's ready and able for you to get to it.
And then here's just a little bit more. Do you want to go into this slide as well? It's a follow up to the previous.
Sure. So I guess, a big problem in our industry, convenience retail is this chimera of retail. We've got all kinds of different technology that was, originally started in grocery or boutique retail or all these other places, gas markets and stuff like that. And you all have done a, amazing job of, finding and picking the best technology to help, really run your businesses. But when it comes to understanding what those things are all doing and then seeing the big picture across all those things, they're locked up in all these different silos of data. And that is what we call the data fragmentation problem. That's, I've got all this information over here in my point of sale systems. I've got some of this information in my back office system. I've got some of this information in my loyalty programs. I've got some of this information in my payroll and HR systems, et cetera. Food prep, all the other things that you guys are doing, like to stay on top of the game, to stay relevant, to drive your business forward. All these require various different technology systems, and they don't always work together very well from a understanding what's going on perspective. We try to help you to get that picture put back together.
Thank you, John. All right. So moving on to back to you, Alan, and with some commentary with John as well. But this is the way that Mach 1's technology environment is set up. Do you guys want to talk a little bit about, Alan, what you've got going on from a technology standpoint?
So we have NCR, their RPOS version of software. So we've got that at all stores. And so we've got that to where without Taiga, I'd be using what they call remote service manager, which is it's in a vacuum of data per location that I can look at. I can pull up any transactions by day or whatever, but it's all kind of within the ecosystem of that store. iRely is our back office software. That we were using them for department level sales, accounting, so on and so forth, but they don't even hold transaction level data as far as I know. Ignite is our loyalty program, always has been. So we kind of the same thing. They have a list of the transaction data that's done within the loyalty program. The food service, we recently moved all of our food service production over to Daco Genie. So everything that gets managed from food service labeling, production data, all that's with Daco Genie today.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So now let's get into the meat of the presentation and talk about AI. It's an exciting but also overwhelming topic in all industries. And so there's a lot of encouragement to experiment with it, see how it works for you, but there's also some apprehension about any pitfalls that might occur. Can you tell us a little bit about your AI journey so far, Alan, and what you found?
Yeah. So I was at a conference in Florida in November, and I don't think I even knew it at the time, but John Oakley was there with Taiga. And one of the presenters was a former Google executive that worked in the AI division, and sat right next to John and listened to this former Google employee spend basically an hour explaining to me that, everybody says AI is coming. I'm going to spend the next hour showing you that AI is not coming. AI is here today. And before that, I was kind of using AI as pretty much everybody in the world, as far as I can tell, is mostly using it. They're using it as kind of a glorified Google search, as one-off questions. You have a question that used to Google, now you're using AI. The Google guy in that presentation, I mean, it was nothing short of absolutely blowing me away with what he was able to accomplish. I had no idea that AI could do that today. So I had a dinner scheduled that night after the meeting. I had my eyes wide open, explained to John, holy crap, this is amazing. John was already fully aware and probably didn't learn anything in that meeting. So he was explaining to me kind of some more stuff and kind of getting into the weeds. So I quickly canceled that dinner that I had that night, much to some people's chagrin, and went to dinner with John. And I sat there for 4 hours as John explained to me where AI is at and where it's coming. And I think that was one of the most powerful dinners I've ever had in my entire life. So came back from Florida, decided, okay, we absolutely have to learn what this is going to be. So signed up for a couple online classes and signed up for a couple subscription accounts and watched YouTube videos and just kind of dove deep into it and started screwing around with it to see what it can do. And it was, equally frustrating as it was productive.
Yes, it is.
Trying to figure out exactly I knew this was something, but I wasn't getting what I was wanting to get, and I really didn't know how to get from point A to point B. So I don't know how much more you want me to expand on that right now, Jenny, but that's kind of my initial experiences with AI.
Well, we can definitely jump into it. So one of the things that I've heard at several conferences, some people have even asked about Taiga specifically. Can't I just go into one of these AI platforms and ask it to do all the things that maybe Taiga's doing, or something like that? And you talk a little bit about.
And that's what I tried doing. That's literally that was my first attempt at AI. So, kind of what I was doing, and what that kind of reminds me of is calling, basically just putting a data dump into an AI project or an AI agent, and thinking that you can give it, mountains of data, let's just say 3 months of every transaction in your company. And then you can just start asking it questions like, it should know what you did at this store on a Tuesday at 2:00 6 weeks ago. That's how I tried doing it. If you're just creating just a data dump and you expect AI to know what you're trying to accomplish, and you have a massive amount of data set that includes a bunch of information that isn't pertinent to what you're trying to achieve, your AI is going to get confused really quickly, and it's going to start giving you either answers you're not looking for, or wrong answers, or you're going to hit your data limits, as I regularly do. And you're going to have to take a step back and kind of the key is getting your stuff structured, as we'll kind of get into.
Yeah, that
John,
is a very, very real and common realization as you start to drive into these tools. Is that you have to think about them a little differently, than that. There are a lot of people out there that are pushing that mantra that AI is just going to figure out all things for you. That as you can think of, is very problematic and inefficient. One, AI is trying to please you. It's trying to come up with an answer that you're going to want. You give it too much stuff that's unrelated to what you're trying to talk about, it's going to get confused. You have to think of it more like from a training perspective. So if you're training an employee coming onto your organization, you would provide them with the right tools to help them to be successful. You have to do that with AI too. And so one of the fundamental things it needs is clear and certified data sources. And so, if you're going to ask it about how am I doing in my salty snacks across my stores, tell me any insights about those right now. One, it needs to understand, how convenience retail organization operates, what salty snacks means, where those go, where they're positioned within the store, how those have performed for you over time, and then all the stuff about the actual data of what's going on with those in your stores in a clean way. That's the part that approach to it misses on, is that you have to set your AI up for success, and that involves being able to guide it and give it the right information. You can't just say my data's all over here in this giant bucket of all this stuff that's happened for forever. Go figure it out. It's gonna get confused. It's gonna make stuff up. It's gonna find wrong answers, and ultimately the result is you make bad decisions, or at worst, you make something happen in your organization where you lose money, or make a decision that causes harm to your business.
Yeah, at one point, John, my AI was telling me how to improve my Domino's pizzas service, and I don't own any Domino's pizzas.
Well, and it probably assumed that you had something Italian food or pizza related, and so it had some world experience with pizza, and it came from.
It was good to know how to improve my Domino's if I ever choose to go that route.
Yeah, if you ever go down that route, it'll probably be able to help you.
I got that. Got that knowledge in there now. Exactly.
All right, let's get into the some of the actual workflows that you went through, Alan. Can you walk us through what that looks like in actual practice?
Yeah, so there is I mean, I think we've got 25 various projects that we're kind of actively using AI for today. And what the majority of them basically is take this data set from this source of data, take this data set from this separate portion of data, and then tell AI how to combine, look at these two data sets, make sure the AI understands what the data sets are, and then make sure it understands what you're trying to achieve. And then, for years, we'd look at this spreadsheet over here and this spreadsheet over here. They're both telling me something important, but I got to combine those two to kind of create a metric that means something to me. That is where today I think AI excels at. So one use case where we really started diving in as a use case today when we're first getting into AI was food service. So, when you think of, we are entirely a grab and go food service program. One is our proprietary label King's Kitchen. Second is our Little Caesars. We do have 4 Little Caesars programs, but all of it's grab and go. So, if you think of how we go to market with our food service, there's really 3 metrics that really matter. How much food are you making? How much of that food that you made are you going to sell? So now you know your revenue, you know your waste, and how much labor did it cost to produce that? So, you have these 3 data sets. You got your labor chart, you got your sales chart, you got your production chart. When we first started trying to do this, we were basically just creating a data dump of our transaction journals to try to figure out, and then trying to combine that. And ultimately, it led to me calling John Oakley saying AI is it's broke. I literally broke the AI. The AI told me that I refused to work on this project is ultimately what it did. And I tried reloading the project. I tried doing it. I tried everything, every way from Sunday to try to figure out how to fix it. And they kept telling me, you keep asking me to do this for you, and I'm not going to do it. And that's when John kind of showed me how to better structure a project. So now, we've got it to where we filter the data with Taiga, and it has a timestamp. Every item sold in our company has a timestamp, has the item sold, the revenue on it, and which location it was. And with Taiga, I can go back 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, 2 years, whatever it is. That's always sitting in their environment for me to pull. And I can pull 1 week, or I can pull a whole year's worth of data. I grabbed that, I grabbed the production report, and I grabbed these timesheets. And so through a series of trial and error and kind of getting the instructions for the AI and the data in the format that I wanted to be where I could easily scale it out as new data comes in. That's how I built out that project. So today,
is this the sheet that you wanted to? Is this that
this
sheet
is
you
the
wanted
sheet.
to go? Yeah, here I'll
Yep.
pull that up, and then that way you won't have to talk to it as much as.
Yep. So this is something that we created for me and the food service director. Kind of built this out in our AI project. So me and him share this AI project. We are uploading the data, me or him, and then from there, we can build out a series of tentacles of where we want to go with it. But this is kind of an overview page that we send out to our ops team. So our COO, our DMs, our store managers, this is kind of the 10,000 foot view of our food service performance. So if you look at the series of tabs that is on the screen there, one on the location overview tab, it kind of gives those 3 metrics I talked about by location. It talks about our sales, our cost of goods sold, our waste percentage, our by category, Little Caesars waste percentage, and our labor costs, and then shows our profit. So you got your 10,000 foot view by location. Then you have your sales breakout in a 13 period calendar. Then it shows your sales versus waste by category by location. Then it shows the sales versus waste by every item in the company. Then it goes on through labor efficiency. So every Monday at a specific store, it says, hey, your labor cost at this store on Mondays is X. Your labor cost at this store on Tuesday is Y. So it took us a series of hours to kind of build out how we wanted to structure this and kind of fine tune what we want. Now, to get a new set of data, it takes 5 minutes. So we get this data up to date basically every day or every other day. It then gets sent out for them to have access to, and then it can do a couple things. One, as an AI, the DMs or the food service person or myself can look at this as an overview page, but now the AI has absorbed and processed that data. So then if I wanted to just ask it about our cheeseburgers, you can start going down the rabbit hole of any one schedule, any one menu item. Then you can start going down to the exciting stuff of AI, because now you made sure that the AI absorbed the data in the way that you wanted it to be absorbed, and you put the instructions in there explaining exactly what the data is and kind of what you're hoping to achieve. So, before we were talking about changing build twos or changing the labor schedule, or adding or removing menu items. I mean, that was done on a quarterly or biannual basis, just because it took hours to kind of process through the data to even come up with, I'm a very numbers driven guy, as John knows. And so to me, the numbers will tell the story if you just get the numbers. But the problem is sometimes it takes a while to accumulate those numbers, and whatever it takes a long time to do, you can't do very often because we're all very busy people. When you get it to where, we're checking our labor schedules, that can get updated. And when I say check a labor schedule, we have it. It's not on the sheet that John just had up there, but on a separate chat within that same project. At any given point in time, I can say, run me the last 4 weeks of the labor efficiency. And so it will take, for instance, Friday at 4 p.m., and it'll take every Friday at 4 p.m. in the data set that I told it to select. So the last 4 Fridays, the last 8 Fridays, whatever I decide is important to me, it will take all those sales in that 4 p.m. hour of that day of the week. It will look at how much labor I had there, and then it will tell me my labor efficiency as a percentage of revenue. So my labor cost percentage of revenue is 25%, 28%. So then me and our food service director have set these guidelines of, okay, here's the threshold that we need to increase labor. Here's the threshold we need to decrease labor, and gave him his structure on what our target range is for a labor schedule. And what used to get changed every 3, 6, 12 months, we're changing on a monthly basis. We had a store, we just added 25 hours of labor at a store a couple days ago. And we never would have been that big of a food service increase, because that was $20,000 a year in budgeting your food service. But we had a target labor cost, and the AI clearly showed that your labor percentage is here, and if you want to get to your range, you need to add this much labor. So it turned what would have been a 1-day project into about a 10-minute project.
Yeah. It really helps you to, with those ambiguous strategic problems. Once you design playbooks like Alan has done here for focus to a business strategy within your organization, you really can iteratively learn through that very quickly and test different hypotheses. And it's really good at those, helping you to answer those ambiguous questions. Yeah. So, yeah. It's a good example of mashing up a lot of different things there to be able to focus in on a problem.
The biggest key for me, and what it's funny about AI. I think it went from being severely underrated to being completely overrated, where people just basically were thinking it was like a Google search. Now they think it can just magically do everything. And through talking to peers in our industry and, just other business owners in other industries. And the biggest thing I always try and push on people is just, you got to have your data structured. You can't just dump it into things. I think you had on one of these slides, talking to, right there, treat it like an AI, like a new employee. Yeah, that's perfect.
Tell us what to do. like starting for those on the call that are like, okay, now what do I do? So you're getting into it already.
Yeah, sorry for jumping the gun there, but you
No,
need
you're
an
good.
employee just a link to all the transaction files, to our stores and said, go come up with a food service thing. You're going to have mistakes, and so being very concise, figure out what you're wanting to achieve, and make sure you're only giving it the set of data that is pertinent to what you're trying to achieve. That way it doesn't get confused because, I've got my cooler sales in and I'm trying to ask it food service questions, because it will start pulling the data sets from other things that doesn't matter today. And the other part about it with the instructions, treating it like a new employee, I think is a great way of saying it, because AI is best done with a two-way conversation. So give it the right data, put the instructions in the best way how to tell it what the data is, what you're trying to achieve. But as you're having these communications, talk to it like it's a person. And if you want it in a different format, or ask it why it did this, a lot of times, I should add that I always double check at least a small sample size to make sure the output matches what the input is. So specific to the food service file, and it tells me I sold, 400 cheeseburgers this month, I'll grab a specific location for a specific day and make sure that what the AI tells me I sold that day is what matches what Taiga says it'll match that day. And when those two numbers are wrong, I'll just ask AI, well, I see that I sold 12 cheeseburgers at that location that day, and you show me 8. Why are we wrong? And it will run through its analysis. And sometimes it's wrong, and sometimes I'm wrong. Sometimes it will say, well, you miscounted. And then I apologize to the AI and say, you're correct. I had that wrong. Other times, it will tell me how it screwed up. And then I will say, well, okay, how did you screw up? It will tell me why it screwed up. Then I'll say, well, put into your memory what you did, how you screwed that up, and to not do that again, so you never screw up that way again. So there's a lot of ways like that you're creating this two-way communication. That was hard pressed by John Oakley, because John always said, hey, you got to be careful, and you got to double check, because it will be wrong. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So prevent it, minimize it as much as you can, and you got to kind of double check this stuff.
Yeah. And it really like Alan's saying here, like, you should have regular performance meetings with it. Like, okay, tell me what's working, tell me what's not working. If we were to bring on another agent, or train a person to do this, would they have all the right information to do what you're already doing, or have we not documented this stuff out for that? Because one thing that's difficult about these tools to see at the surface is every time you start a new session with it, like it is a new session. It's reading through whatever you provided in the past, and it's making assumptions based off of that. It's not like you're talking to the same one you had the last session with. And so you have to make sure that you're having these regular meetings to plan for the long term with it. Can we make a long-term playbook of this? How would you teach another agent how to do this? Have we done that already, or should we do that now? Do you know everything you need to know to be able to accomplish this task? Please send that back to me in a list of bullets here so I can review it ahead of time, because I want to make sure you're doing your job well. It's all about designing your intent when you're working with these tools. We are very much in, what I would consider the Wild West period of working with AI. It's very similar to me being an older guy to back when, the first few iterations through the early internet days, where lots of opportunity, but there's also lots of pitfalls. You should be using these tools, but you should be using them in a very safe way and boxing it into a place where you know that you can control it. And make sure that you can be successful with it. But it is very powerful tool already that you can work with, and there's lots and lots of variety out there to excel with it. That being said, along with that, there's lots of new companies coming into our industry, into other industries. They're doing a great job with their models that we're working with and partnering with to help them to be successful as they take us to the next stage and the stage after that when it comes to these tools.
I think that a couple of weeks ago, John and I were at Chicago at SOI, and he was showing me even more things that we can do with AI and Taiga and everything. And what I think I was most surprised about was like when we would go into a session, so we'd have our breakouts, but then when we would go back to a session, John would actually tell it to stop working. Like, you need to stop working. I'm going into this session, because it would just keep going. And I think that was a light for me in that you really have to tell it what to do and what not to do. And when we got back, he'd say, okay, we're working again now, and take it from there.
It is a management responsibility.
Yeah. Right. It is, it's not a person, but if you can treat it again, like you guys are saying, as you would a new employee who doesn't know much background of what's going on, then that really does help as well. So if you were starting,
then, on that point too, Jenny, the, that food service thing is just kind of one very specific use case, but as you have your agent and your account, and you start talking about I've got a couple different AI subscriptions, and it knows it's Alan Meyer. It knows it's CEO of Mach 1 stores. One thing, when you're talking to an AI, and you want to talk to about it, like if I wanted to ask AI about Taiga, I can describe Taiga, or I can use Taiga and then put in the website. It will read the website, and then it'll know everything about Taiga just by that website. So think about ways to kind of make sure your AI, I use Claude and Gemini, but whatever one you use, making sure it understands who you are, what your company is, what is your goals just as a company, not as an AI. And then, it is great. It used to be where, you start thinking of you'd have these questions. Now my default is always, okay, how can AI fix that? So, whether it be market analysis, real estate, for growth, for M&A, for auditing procedures. If it is data that you can then process to spit out an outcome, you should you are either putting that on AI today, you should have that on a roadmap to put that on AI today, or you are going to be falling behind your competition. Because I think AI is two things. One, I think it's the great equalizer of our industry. I don't need to be a 2,000 seat store company to afford AI. I need $20 a month. So it's amazing. I think this thing can be a great leveler that I don't need to scale to have it. But two, the people in our industry that are the hyper consolidators, the large players, I guarantee you they've got teams of people working on this right now. And if you aren't at least trying to develop your own AI roadmap, how it fits with your company, you are falling behind every day, because I guarantee you they are all better at it today than they were yesterday, and they'll be better at it tomorrow than they are today.
So for those of the individuals who are part of the webinar right now who are currently using Taiga, if you would give them, they end this session, everyone's very excited about it. What's the first thing that they could do? Is there a specific area in Taiga you would suggest that they look at first to kind of get a feel for how to use the data out of Taiga with AI?
For me, depending on how labor optimization, labor I think is one of the biggest keys to how profitable your locations are. So we gauge our labor optimization by transaction counts. So to me, whether you're buying a candy bar or buying a $80 bottle of bourbon, that to me takes the same amount of time. So that requires the same amount of labor. That's how we do it. A lot of people do it labor cost per sales dollar. A lot of people do labor dollar per profit dollar. all of that could be done within Taiga. So labor, one, you're only looking at a couple of very small data sets. One, what's your schedule? What's your labor schedule? Two, what is your metric for labor efficiency? Is it transaction counts? Is it labor costs? Whatever it may be. You're going to marry those two data sets with an AI. What Taiga will give you from the sales and how you determine what your labor cost is. And then you start giving metrics of what your goals are. Where do you think is too staffed and where do you think it is understaffed? And it will start spitting out outcomes. The one thing I would say is you build that out, do it with the mindset that I'm wanting to learn it today, but I want to reuse this project a month from now when I have next month's data. So think about how you're going to piggyback additional months of the data, the updated labor schedule, the updated sales, whatever it may be. Always think about how you're scaling that out as time goes on.
Awesome. John, do you have any, from your perspective, do you have any recommendations on what they could take a look at first?
I think it's incredibly useful for any sort of problem that is semi-ambiguous. And so I get approached a lot of times with our customers of, like, we want to set targets for this, or we want to better understand that. It is a great way to be able to help you go through the ideation process. You can pull a data set from Taiga, you can pull data sets from other places, and then put them together using an agent and start asking it questions and help it to ask you questions back of, well, how do you see this? How would you see it better? What do you see that's exceptions in here? What do you see works well? What doesn't work well? Are my stores very similar? Are they very different from this perspective? Give me different ways to think about this. And then you just kind of continually build on that. And you can do that process in a matter of minutes for a lot of different use cases to come up with a way to, plan out a strategy. And then from there, you say, okay, we need to do this and figure out a way to make this something that we can turn into a playbook, something we can do over and over again. And that might be something that you're asking Jenny and her team at Taiga to build you new dashboards that are focused on this area that you're going to deploy out to store managers to tell them, okay, your target is this, and it should look like this, and there's this perfect chart that does this for you. And then we're going to, watch that with this AI agent to make sure that everybody's keeping track with it, and it tells Alan about it. There's things you can do in that regard. The other thing that it's really good for is those throwaway projects. We are dealing with this challenge right now. Maybe one thing that a lot of people approached me with, like turn of last year, was a lot of states were making changes to things like EBT and stuff like that. They wanted to better understand what was state by state, region by region they had that was able to be purchased with EBT, and how people were actually purchasing. And answering those kind of convoluted deep data questions are other really great ways to leverage these tools to kind of surface that up to very simple answers where, okay, I'm only going to need to do this once, but it's something that would take me and a team hours or days or weeks to do. With these tools, it's incredibly easy. You can go and look at your item sales summary on Taiga, pull the export of everything that's in these categories for this month across all your stores, and then plug that in there, and then run from there. Or maybe it's tell me some insights about whether or not I'm running the right type of promotions. You can put in a handful of promotions across from your promotion trackings page, and pull the scan data for that and say, okay, which vendors am I actually needing to spend the most time with to get better deals with? Or, what deals should I approach them with to try to work with my more local vendors to see if I can't get better local deals? Stuff like that. Those ambiguous problems, that's what is really, really good at doing today. Now, tomorrow and out in the future, as we're looking at like later in 2026 and in 2027, there are a lot of new companies coming into our industry and into other industries that have models that are already trained to handle these things. They just need access to really good data sources like Taiga. And we're collaborating with those companies and then helping them to understand how you guys do business to bring you those next steps and the ones after that. So like I said, today we're kind of in the Wild West of what's going on, but this stuff is rolling so quickly and changing so quickly that there's going to be constant new opportunities here. And so you really have to be paying attention to it.
Awesome. Thank you. So we talked a lot about AI today, and I want to make sure that we have time for questions. So again, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to throw those into the chat. Alan is very passionate about what he does at his organization, and then also how he uses Taiga across various areas within the organization. And so I just wanted to see, this is also a test for me to see if I can make the poll feature work here, but get the poll to work. If you all would be interested in doing another webinar with a member of Alan's team to talk about some of the items that I have listed there. Alan touched on labor optimization a little bit, but we can also talk about how Mach 1 uses Taiga for loss prevention, vendor negotiation, waste reduction, and really give some like meaty use cases. If you're interested in that, if you could, I think everyone should have a little plus button at the bottom of your chat. And if you want to click on that, if that is a topic of interest or a series of topics of interest, then we can plan for that. So please feel free. Looks like we are nice.
There it goes.
Some answers in.
Yeah, I was worried that they'd be like my wife, say no.
Yeah.
No, we don't want to see Alan or John again.
No. We're hoping he goes golfing tonight, so we don't have to hang out with him.
I heard. There is a what? There is a no in there. Somebody doesn't.
Frank Horton. I bet that's Frank Horton. I saw him on the list.
Nice.
I better get a text.
All right. Well, as it looks like the overwhelming answer is yes. So we will get Alan and his team back on for another session. So we really appreciate you helping us out today, Alan. And again, if anyone has any questions, please drop those in. And we'll give just a few minutes. I can turn my camera off for a minute. If anyone, Alan,
while we're waiting on those questions, Jenny, the one thing I would tell people is, I mean, I think it can get very intimidating, and I think that some of the cautionary tales that we were kind of talking about earlier in this is something to be aware of. But the good side of this, like, I mean, it blows my mind almost every day. It is just crazy what we're doing with this today. And I mean, we are literally today only limited by our creativity on how we can utilize it, and two, my limited skill set and trying to use AI. So, it really is a thing where you just kind of dive deep into it and kind of mess with it. And you're kind of, you're learning how to use AI as your AI is learning who you are.
Yep.
And, I get this. I've got my wife and all my kids on pro accounts. I'm making them do it. They are so tired of me talking about AI, I assure you. But same thing, like, it's a skill set that you develop. And whether it be them or other people, and they'll say, well, AI was wrong. And yeah, AI is wrong, but it's not perfect 100% of the time. But think about, why did they get it wrong? Was it did you just ask the wrong question? Did you give it the wrong data? And if it was wrong, don't just assume that, don't throw your hands up in the air and say, well, this isn't working. Figure out why it broke, and then say, okay, here's how I'm going to make sure it doesn't break like that again. Those concerns and those spot checks on what we're doing with various projects, I'm guessing I would find something. The output of what we were looking at was wrong, I bet 15, 20% of the time when 3 months ago, as we were kind of getting into it. It's probably been a month since I saw anything on the reporting side of this come wrong. And it's because, we kind of found, it would confuse, let's just take this food service one. It would confuse our cheeseburgers with our double cheeseburgers. It would confuse our cheeseburgers with the sliders. It would confuse this location with this location. There was multiple places it screwed up, and each time we would correct it and then make sure you understood what it is and don't do that again. To the point now that, the AI knows more about our food service programs and what we are, what we sell, what we're trying to accomplish better than I do, because it's constantly getting pumped in. Here's what we're wanting to do. Here's what we're wanting to do. Similar to like what John was talking about earlier, where it's like, okay, stop working. I'll be back in an hour type of thing.
Awesome. Thank you, Alan. We have had a couple questions come in. So the first one is more of a general Taiga question. Somebody has asked, what is the first thing that you check in Taiga each day, Alan?
So I've got the one thing I really like about Taiga is you got all these different sets, different places you got the information, and you got your canned way of doing it, but then I can arrange and filter the columns and the dates to what I like and then save that view. So every morning I look at two things. I've got the sales report that shows the total inside sales and total transactions, total loyalty percentage, and gallons sold by company for that day. How did that compare for that same day previous week? And where is that one trending? That gets pulled up almost every day. And then the other one is, how did my food service perform? Where is the sales at that?
I figured that was one of your top morning ones of the food.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those two I do every day.
You're like, oh, I'm not getting into food service right now. It's
oh God, I know. Well, you can tell.
You were like,
hey,
yeah,
someone,
we're getting into food service.
I blame Frank Orton on that. Actually, if he's still on here, he's the one that told me I need to get into food service.
Yeah, you guys are doing a great job at it. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Then third, I don't do on a daily basis, but tracking. So we are big into self-checkout. So what is the percentage of my total transactions on self-checkout by location on a daily, weekly, monthly basis? And is that trending up or down? For us, a path to labor efficiency is self-checkout usage.
All right. Very nice. Awesome. We also have a question. So you're looking at all this information out of Taiga. What is Taiga doing to make sure that the data is accurate, that's being that's being pulled in? Maybe John, that one for you.
Yeah, I'll handle that, and then I'll answer Travis's question from Phillips too.
Yep.
So Taiga's doing lots of things, and some of those are AI native things, and some of those things are just basic things built into our pipeline from how we do stuff. So everybody's familiar with connect to all your sources, your point of sale, your back office, and those sorts of things in near real time, pulling transactions that are flowing in, pulling information from your back office, your labor system, your loyalty programs, and those sorts of things, and then bringing it all together. But that's just the most basic level of, okay, we get that information. There are layers and layers and layers of different systems in place that are checking and making sure that that is all gelled together. And so we have all sorts of tools that are doing everything's from like the most basic things like automatically cataloging everything that comes in to the next standard. So if you go and you're talking to your study group partner or somebody in looking at next SOI or something like that, you can see apples to apples, that sort of stuff. But also cleaning up discrepancies between this salad that Alan's selling at this store is on this UPC, but it's the exact same item over here, but it's selling on a slightly different one because it's on a different pause, or it's coming from an older price book record, or this or that and the other. Making all that stuff make sense, all the way up to understanding those real discrepancies in actual data that we bring to you and say, oh, okay, like we actually have this issue here that we're going to have to help you correct in your price book or in your fuel costing or this or that and the other. So lots of systems underneath the layers of systems under there. They're constantly checking and rechecking your data to try to help you to have clean data. Then you have all of our dashboards and reports and stuff like that. And those are what we call certified data sets. And so you go to the product store card, the list of transactions there, that is a true set of what your transactions are, whatever you're looking at, this store or that store or this group or that group. Same thing with item summary or sales per labor hour. All those metrics are already trued up by the time you get to them. And then when somebody like you or Alan goes and says, okay, I want to take that and I want to load that into an agent, you can be assured that that is 99.95, whatever percent accurate, that's what your real data is up to that moment. So we put lots and lots into that to make sure that you've always got really good data. I guess moving on to Travis's question here.
Yes, please.
So Travis is at Phillips. He's working in AI over there, and he asked, working through the basic foundations of prompting AI with the 4 Ws, and how do we leverage it for outstanding tasks, prior days, prior weeks, and stuff like that. Alan, I'll let you answer this from your perspective too, but from my perspective, yes, we do for that, but kind of talk to specific how and why of that. Obviously, for anybody that doesn't know, the 4 Ws are the who, what, where, why, and then how. So basically what Travis is talking about there is the whole process of designing intent. So you're talking to your AI agent, and you're trying to teach it, how you want it to do something, what, where, when, and why. Okay. And like Alan, I've said this whole time, trying to, talk to it in the same way that you would train or coach a new employee or an existing employee that you're trying to teach skills to, and making sure that you're preparing them for the long term. That part is kind of the fundamental part of what everybody's doing with working with AI, trying to train it, teach it to do different things. This is the second part of what Travis is saying there is, what about finishing up, buttoning up, leveraging it to do tasks from prior days that needs to clean up? I do a lot of that, but I only do that in areas where I feel confident that the who, what, when, where, why, and how is clearly defined out with that agent, where it already knows that ahead of time. And so with my agents, I run through at the beginning of every session, I do a typical Scrum style stand up with them to make sure that everything is primed in the way that I want it, and then runs through a series of tests to make sure that it is prepared to either do any new tasks with me or button up anything that I had from the prior day. And so that way I can make and ensure that I know that I'm confident that it can move on to those tasks. So like what Jenny was saying about, like when we were at the show a couple weeks ago, and I was working on a few things, and I told it, well, I'm going to be off in a session now, so I don't want you to work on this, that, and the other thing, but it's okay for you to do this and this and this. That's where I'm making those managerial decisions with it. So that's why earlier I was saying, treat this as a management relationship, and you'll be successful with it. I hope that helps.
Yeah, just kind of going back to that original project where we pulled the screen up, John, for the food service, the 4 Ws. So like for that project specifically, Claude and Gemini basically work the same, and I suspect they all do. You have your cloud drive to store your data, and then you got the instructions that you're supposed to give it. So almost always at those instructions, I start with, hey, this is, for that one, I want to track the performance for each menu item in Arcade's Kitchen and Little Caesars category for Mach 1, www.mach1stores.net. So now it knows I'm trying to track for Kate's Kitchen, Little Caesars, and it has the Mach 1 and my website. So now it knows exactly who's looking for it. Then I take the next section to describe exactly what files I'm going to give it and what those files mean. So there's a series of lines basically explaining the data sets. Then I have a third file that basically has the name of the menu item that Taiga uses, the name of the menu item that Genie uses, because those names don't necessarily match up. So let's say it may be cheeseburger in Taiga, it may be some version of cheeseburger in Genie. I say, okay, our cheeseburger's named this in Taiga, named this in our production file. Here is my standard retail, and here is our menu cost, and here is that shelf life. So it now knows what Taiga calls it. It knows what my production file calls it. It knows what the regular price is. It can show it when we're doing various employee or other types of discounts. It then knows what the shelf life is for this. Once you kind of get all that structured into that, now you got the who, you got the what, we've got to the point now we're automating our build tos. And what it is each one of those menu items, we have the minimum we want to put out there and the maximum. So let's just say for cheeseburger example, and I want to have at minimum 2 out there at all times that we're going to sell it. At most, I want to have 10 because maybe that's the most I can fit, whatever those 2 numbers are. Anywhere in between that, I want to target a 15% waste. You get my build to where I'm going to have enough out there that will give me a 15% waste or 10% waste. We've actually played with those target waste numbers, but as long as it knows what you're willing to go low end, maximum end, and hey, let's try to get this to this waste percentage, you've kind of given it as guidelines.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you, John. We are 1 minute from the top of the hour, so I want to be cognizant of everybody's time. If you guys have follow-up questions, again, you're welcome to put them in the chat, or you can, I believe here, we've got some information, a QR code that you can use, or you can call, text me, send me an email, myself or John, and we'll get back to you. And again, thank you so much, John, and thank you so much, Alan. And we look forward to continuing the conversation here on the next webinar.
Thanks, Jenny. Thanks, John.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks all. Take care, everybody. Have a great day.